The Roman Empire is one of the most influential civilizations in history. They spread their influence across 3 continents, and their impact on language, law, architecture, engineering, military tactics, and politics is still felt today. But how did Rome go from a small Italian city to ruling the Mediterranean and beyond? And why did it fall? Let's find out. Number 1. Rome is founded. Legend says that in 753 BCE, Romulus killed his twin brother Remus. After the two of them founded the city of Rome. Whether or not this story is true, what isn't up for debate is that Rome was founded sometime around this period. The city's exact origins are unknown. But it's thought that Rome started off as a small village on the Tiber River, much like other villages in the area. But the Romans were ambitious, and they slowly grew their settlement into a city. This was helped along by a series of fortunate events. For starters, the Romans were situated right in the middle of the Mediterranean, which allowed them to trade with and pillage other civilizations with ease. The Romans also had strong alliances with other Italian tribes, and they used these alliances to grow their power base. And finally, the Romans adopted a new form of government, a republic. Under this system, power was held by an elite group of citizens who were elected to serve in government. This system gave the Romans a big advantage over their neighbors who were ruled by kings. It allowed them to pool the resources of their entire state and use them to conquer and trade with other civilizations. And so Rome became a major power in Italy. After a few centuries of preparation, Rome began its conquest of the Mediterranean. They started by subjugating the nearby Etruscans, and then they moved on to conquering the rest of Italy. At the same time, the Romans were fighting many wars against their rivals, Carthage. These wars were long and costly, but eventually Rome came out on top, and they gained control of the entire Mediterranean. Rome had become a massive empire, stretching from Spain to Egypt. But this was just the beginning. Over the next few centuries, Rome would continue to grow. They would conquer Britain, France, Germany, and even parts of Asia. By the height of its power, the Roman Empire stretched from Britain to North Africa and from Portugal to Syria. It was a truly massive empire. Number 2, Julius Caesar. In 49 BCE, Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon River with his army. This act of defiance marked the end of the Roman Republic and the beginning of the Roman Empire. Caesar had been named dictator, a title that hadn't been used in centuries. He had defeated his rivals, and he was now the most powerful man in Rome. But Caesar's rule was short-lived. He was assassinated by a group of senators who feared that he was becoming too powerful. After Caesar's death, Rome descended into civil war. Caesar's adopted son, Octavian, emerged victorious from the conflict. In 27 BCE, he was named Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. Augustus's rule marked the beginning of the Golden Age of Rome. The empire was stable, prosperous, and at peace. Augustus was succeeded by a series of capable emperors who continued Rome's prosperity. But this Golden Age didn't last forever. In the 2nd century AD, Rome's expansionist tendencies returned. The empire began to grow again, but this time it overextended itself. Rome was now stretching from Britain to Mesopotamia. It was simply too much land for the empire to effectively govern. To make matters worse, Rome's army was being drained by constant wars along the empire's far-flung borders. At the same time, corruption was growing in Rome. The gap between the rich and poor was widening, and the emperors were becoming more and more decadent. In 180 AD, the Emperor Commodus took the throne. He was the son of the great Marcus Aurelius. Commodus was weak, corrupt, and unpopular. The people of Rome longed for the return of stability and prosperity. Number 3. The fall of Rome. In 193 AD, Septimius Severus seized power in Rome. He ended the Antonine dynasty and began his own. He restored order to the empire, and he began to persecute Christians. The persecution of Christians became a common theme among Roman emperors. They saw Christianity as a threat to the stability of Rome. The Christians didn't believe in the Roman gods, and they refused to participate in Roman customs. This made them very suspicious in the eyes of the Romans. In 284 AD, Diocletian split the empire into 2 halves, east and west. This was an attempt to make the empire more manageable. But it only made things worse. Each half of the empire was ruled by an emperor, and this led to competition between the 2 halves. The Western Roman Empire became increasingly unstable. The economy declined, inflation rose, and the army became more and more important. In 313 AD, the Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity. This didn't solve the empire's problems, though. In fact, it made things worse. The legalization of Christianity led to the conversion of many Romans, including the emperor's own mother. But this didn't bring the empire together. Instead, it created a new division between Christians and pagans. In 378 AD, the Western Roman Empire suffered a devastating defeat at the Battle of Adrianople. The Visigoths had invaded Italy, and they were led by their king, Alaric. The Romans were defeated, and Alaric sacked the city of Rome. This was a turning point in Roman history. From this point forward, the Western Roman Empire was doomed. In 410 AD, Alaric returned to sack Rome again. He was now working with the Vandals and the Suebi. The sack of Rome shook the Western Roman Empire to its core. People began to believe that Rome was doomed. In 455, the Vandals sacked Rome. This was the last straw. The people of Rome had had enough. On September 4th, 76 AD, the Germanic chieftain Odoacer deposed Romulus Augustulus, the last emperor of the Western Roman Empire. Rome had fallen. Now, before we move on, let's take a moment to answer the question, why did Rome fall? There's no single answer to this question, and historians continue to debate it to this day. But there are a few factors that likely contributed to Rome's downfall. First, Rome was overextended. The empire was simply too large for the amount of people that Rome had to effectively govern it. This led to instability and corruption within the empire. Second, Rome's army was too powerful. The Roman army was the backbone of the empire. But as the army grew larger and more powerful, it became more of a threat than an asset. Eventually, the army began to turn on Rome itself. Third, Rome was divided. The empire was split between the East and the West. This created competition between the two halves of the empire, and it made it impossible for Rome to come together and solve its problems. Finally, Rome was infiltrated by Christianity. The legalization of Christianity led to division and corruption within the empire. The Christians didn't believe in the Roman gods, and this created a barrier between them and the rest of society. So those are some of the reasons why Rome fell. Number 4. What happened next? Even though the Western Roman Empire fell in for 76 AD, Rome wasn't done yet. The Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, continued on for another 1,000 years. The capital of the Byzantine Empire was Constantinople, which had been founded by the Emperor Constantine in 330 AD. The Byzantines were heavily influenced by Greek culture, and this led to them being known as the Greeks. In the West, however, the people of Rome had a different view of themselves. They still saw themselves as Romans, and this led to the term Western Roman Empire being used to describe them. The Western Roman Empire may have fallen in for 76 AD, but the Roman people lived on. Their culture, language, and traditions continued to influence Europe for centuries to come. In fact, many historians argue that the Western Roman Empire never really fell at all. Instead, it simply evolved into the modern states of Europe. So that's a look at the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. From its humble beginnings as a small Italian village to its massive power in the Mediterranean and beyond, Rome's story is an amazing one. While the empire's long gone, its influence can still be seen today. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.